Thank you for joining us, Danielle, and perhaps you could begin with telling us a little bit about your background in technology and what you've been up to over the last few years.
Yeah, so I'm Daniel. I'm a developer advocate at Classic 6, and so I have a background in computer science. I'm working in the industry for almost 20 years now. And before I joined Classic 6, I worked in Amsterdam for a digital agency where I was like head of digital department, doing all this, campaigning and using different technologies and helping our teams to, get software up and running as quick as possible.
Okay, fantastic. And so, what, in terms of the work you're doing at Cloud 66, what is the work that you do personally, and also what are your sort of interests and passions at the moment?
Yeah, good question. So basically, the developers advocate, it's a person who's split in two parts, basically.
Yeah.
Not literally, but the one side you're working with the engineer team working on the product, and the other side you're talking to a lot of customers and go to conferences and talk about technology and how, for instance, containerization can help like DevOps teams to, enable them to deploy their applications quicker, make be more agile and all that stuff. So as a developer advocate, you have like one feet in more in the marketing and in the customer relations, and the other feet is standing more into the engineering and designing and working on the product.
Right, fantastic. So perhaps for people who aren't familiar with Cloud 66 and what you provide as a company, perhaps you could give a little bit of background about Cloud 66, what problem you're solving, and also what offers and services you provide to clients.
Yeah, I think the nice thing to talk about Classic 6 is that when I wasn't joining Classic 6 before I joined Classic 6, as a developer and as a company, you want to be succeeding with your web applications and your and all that stuff, and you don't want to get stuck with all this, provisioning the servers and all that stuff. You just want to have your app up and running, and especially when you have like a startup or doesn't matter what kind of company, you just want to have like value to your business and to your customers.
Yeah.
You don't. So when I worked for this digital agency in Holland, so the project has to be like quickly getting online, and you don't want to spend like lots of money on operations side. So what Classic 6 does at that moment, I find out Classic 6, and what Classic 6 does is just take the ops pain away from developers so that you can quickly deploy your application on any cloud or on your own infrastructure. So basically what Classic 6 is doing is just, build, deploy and manage your applications for you. So basically you call it like DevOps as a service or easy ops for devs. So it basically take all the operations pains away, so you can focus on your application and be agile as possible. Adjust to changes and everything. Yeah.
So I suppose it sounds really interesting, and I guess rather than providing a platform as a service where it's all hosted by Cloud 66, what you're doing is enabling people to do that kind of continuous build, delivery, deployment. But into either their own infrastructure or other third-party cloud infrastructure. Is that
the problem with platform as a service? It's like a black box, right? So it's really, from a developer point of view, it's nice because you don't have to take care of operations. But the thing is, sometimes you need like access to your server. Maybe you want to install this particular package, or you want to do other stuff which the platform as a service doesn't provide you. So I like the hybrid kind of approach where you can say, so we take the pain away of provisioning your servers, installing all the security and networking and all that stuff, but still you have access to your service. You still see what's under the hood, and I think that's a nice balance for your DevOps team, for your developers and your operations guys.
So it's kind of the benefits of a platform as a service, but with a bit more control and flexibility in exactly how you provision the environments, right? Okay, and I guess that might be particularly helpful as well, because I've always found with a lot of platform as a service, it's great as long as your app that you're building fits the mold. And I guess a lot of people work with legacy applications or existing software, and it's sometimes quite difficult to package those things up in a way that will work on a particular platform as a service provider. Okay, so that's really interesting. So you've talked there. You mentioned. I think you've almost touched on this now, that we see DevOps teams wanting to use those kinds of technologies, so containerization and cloud. What is it you think that those technologies bring to a DevOps team? Why does a DevOps team not really want to just get their own server and install it in a data center somewhere?
So basically, what containerization means for a DevOps team is that you're not locked into one language or one infrastructure provider. I mean, it's like a container is just, the format where you can move your code from A to B. And the nice thing is that if you want to deploy it on Amazon, and then the next time you just want to deploy it on your own bare metal servers, you can, because you have like this container. You can, ship it to some other place. And the nice thing is that also it makes from a developer point of view, when you develop your code on your local machine to running in production, all those steps are almost the same. So it's more seamless, and you can also move quickly from code to production. For me personally, what I liked about when containers came around the corner was that it allowed me to be more like a polyglottic approach, where you can say, well, I can now choose, okay, for this, if you're looking for microservice architecture, for this service, I use Java because Java is the right choice in that language. But for other thing, maybe I want to write a little, I don't know, a parser or something. Maybe Ruby is a better choice. So I can use that language. And also from a hiring perspective, you don't have to hire all those Java experts. You can also say, okay, for this part, maybe some machine learning, I use R, which runs in the container. So I can just, get some guy from an artificial intelligence study and write that machine learning thing for me. So that makes it interesting to just mix match all those technologies together and then deploy it on your infrastructure. So, and also from an operations point of view, the operations guys, they have to know what's inside that container, but they gonna ship those containers, and which is, I mean, if you look at containerization, which makes it really interesting for a DevOps team, is that now as a developer, you're shifting a little bit to the operations side, and the operations side is getting closer to the developer. So if you want to succeed with containers, you really need to work as a team and see how, I mean, if you look for container technology like Docker, you have to create a Docker file to have the container working. So you have to work together. How are we going to create that Docker file? How make it performant? How do we do security? All that steps really important to succeed with containers. So it's really interesting technology, but it needs some planning and some insight of the technology, how to benefit in your DevOps team.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you say that, because we had a chat, a DevOps chat in August, where we were talking about collaboration tools, and one of the collaboration tools that came out was Docker, and people don't necessarily think of it as a collaboration tool, but I guess what you're saying is it enables developers and people running the infrastructure to really to agree how the environment that the code should be running in, and it's enabling a communication between lots, and I guess between developers as well, making sure you're all developing on the same kind of setup. What I haven't come across before, which is really interesting, is you've tied it into microservices, and then the idea that each microservice you can use the best technology choice for that particular niche, rather than having to choose the best overall stack, but it's going to be a compromise in some particular areas of your application. So can you talk a little bit more about sort of microservices and DevOps and how you see them supporting each other?
Well, I see a couple of couple of projects I saw was that they're just using one technology for their microservice and then just build all of those microservices with different teams, so you can scale up your teams and just have, okay, so we have one Docker file and we have this framework where we build our services in just one for Erlang or other technology. But on the other side, you also see teams when they're saying, okay, we're going to choose the right technology for the right service, when you can just say, okay, so if we have a contract, how services talk to each other by API, RESTful APIs, or using like a message queue, then it doesn't matter what implementation looks like. The only thing you want to make sure when how do you manage those services in production, and also the software lifecycle. If somebody is like really great in R and is going to leave the company, who's going to maintain that code? So sometimes you have to be careful to say, okay, we can use all technology in one, nice architecture, but you want to also, maintain that software lifecycle. So on one hand, I really like to, use the best technology for the best services. On the other side, you have to be careful that you're not going to have this architecture where you're using Java, Ruby, Golang, Python, and all the different.
A new one every week.
Yeah. Well, it's possible, but so that's something you have to. I mean, as a team, you have to decide what you want to go for. It. For instance, here in Cloud we use Ruby and Golang. That's the main languages we have, and everybody knows how to program in Ruby and in Golang. So it's really easy when somebody picking up a service from your colleague. You can just continue to work. So, but for me as a developer, really like is that I'm not bound to just one language or one framework. And if we need something which is much better or bring our product faster to market, we can just do it because it runs in the container.
Use it. And did you mentioned there briefly about the kind of the service life cycle, and do you I mean, do you see challenges around having lots of microservices and versioning and how you can update services without negatively impacting on others? Is that something you've seen?
Yeah, so basically, with our project with Cloud 66 for Docker, we always try to figure out how you can manage those services, and if it's like a microservice or just a service, doesn't matter. I mean, it's a service, and what you want is, of course, zero downtime deployment. So meaning when you have you have version 1 running on production and you update your code and you want to run version 2, you want to go, you push your code, build it. And when new version is ready to go, then you switch your traffic, and that makes it like a zero downtime deployment, which is really interesting because if you're talking about continuous integration and deployment, you want like a seamless integration from the developer to the operation side of the whole, for your whole architecture and also deploying your application. And so the difficulty, of course, is if you have like lots of services, which one's gonna change, and then you have to switch the traffic, and there's a lots of operations involved with that. And so if you're building your own platform or using a bespoke platform or some open source project, you have to be make sure that those things like versioning and deploying all those versions in microservices is going to do that's deployed right.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, you've touched on several really interesting topics, and I think it's really interesting to get the insight from someone like yourself who works with lots of different developers, helping them to try and implement these things. I suppose let's just finish off because we're almost out of time. I'd be really interested to hear from you what your kind of number one tip or your top tip would be for teams who perhaps are not using containers today or not using cloud, and perhaps what you would see as the best way for them to take the first step on that journey.
Yeah. So what we see with our customers is that almost 70% of our customers don't have like greenfield projects. They already have like a code base. So my advice, just start with a project you already have, like maybe a Ruby application, a Java application, and start writing a Docker file where you Dockerize your service. And and the advice is that Docker, like a container, is not a virtual machine. So don't try to put everything inside your Docker container. Just make sure that only run that process. Basically, it's what containers doing for you is just isolate your process, and then you can scale up your process of multiple times if you want to scale depending on your load. So that's one, and the other one is also that you bring in when you have your DevOps team, just work together to find out which is the best way to create the Docker file, and also go for creating a Docker Compose where you can easily start up your infrastructure on your local machine and mimic your production environment. So you can say, okay, I have this service and it has a database, just spin it up your local machine, see if it works, and then move slowly from your development to your test environment, just running your tests inside containers, and then the next step is going to run it in production using our service or another service you want to deploy. But the start is just make you're familiar with Docker files, and also as a team make decisions how that Docker file looks like, how the container looks like, how we approach the development, the testing, and production stages.
So it's really good advice. So it's interesting. So start with Docker, create a file, do it collaboratively. So don't just have one guy defining the Docker file. But also, it sounds to me like you're suggesting you begin at the development end and try and get the test environment on your local PC running in that way, and then you move it through to maybe a pre-production environment, and then through to production as well.
Running things in production is a whole other ball game. Just get your hands dirty on the Docker files and get familiar with Docker, and then slowly move to the production environments, and maybe spin up like a development environment using one of the Docker in production companies.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us for the video. Really looking forward to the Twitter chat with you as well, Daniel.
Sure.
So yeah, thanks very much, and looking forward to Thursday night.
Yeah, thank you, David.